choices for you and your family. Cook it, give it. You'll love when you live it. L-I-V-E, live it.
Hello everyone, my name is Andrea Miller and I'm a registered dietitian and certified diabetes educator here at Community Hospitals and Wellness Centers in Bryan. And I'd like to welcome you all to Live It Homegrown. And today I have a very special guest with me, the woman that inspired my love for cooking and nutrition, and also registered nurse, longtime registered nurse here at Community Hospitals and Wellness Centers. My mom, Deb Pietrzakowski.
Thank you.
And I also have to mention she's a little bit of an expert on herbs and really she's an expert on a lot of things. So, you know, she taught me how to cook, she taught me how to garden, she taught me all about food and nutrition. She has a huge herb garden, really a huge garden in general, grows almost anything from herbs to grapes. She makes wine, she forages, so they pretty much do almost everything. So we were saying before we got started that we teach each other a little bit about nutrition. She teaches me, and then hopefully I teach her a little bit too. So it's a passion that we sort of share. So today, since I have an herb expert with me, we are going to talk a little bit about herbs, and I'm going to show you how to use some. So if you start an herb garden, you're not wasting your time. You make good use out of the herbs that you grow. We are going to be making a pesto, and I actually have given you several different recipes for pestos, and we're only going to be making the first one on the list, so don't worry, you're not going to be here forever making pestos. We're going to be doing a basil pesto, and then, you know, of course, when you make pesto, you know, what do you do with it? So I'm going to show you two different things that you can do with pesto, and hopefully they're things that you're interested in seeing because you guys requested to see a pizza and a pasta dish. So we're going to use pesto in both pizza and a healthy pasta recipe. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Actually, I forgot to turn on my water, but it was pretty close to boiling here. So we'll give it a second and make sure that it's boiling, and then we'll start cooking our pasta. But while the pasta is cooking, we're going to start with our pesto recipe. So I have a giant food processor here. So at home you'll probably have a little bit smaller food processor. Hopefully I can get the lid off of it. There we go. So don't be alarmed by the, the intensity of this food processor. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get started with, we're actually going to have to grind our cheese a little bit. And it's really important in a pesto that you use fresh Parmesan cheese. So if you use the powdered Parmesan cheese that you get that's like pre-packaged, it's just not going to taste the same. So you really want to start with the freshest Parmesan cheese that you can. I think we may have tried the ground stuff in one of the trial runs, and it just kind of tasted almost gritty in the pasta. So start with fresh. So that's what it would look like. I'm just going to unwrap it. If you've never used fresh Parmesan, it's really worth it. That's pretty much all I use anymore. The first time I tried fresh Parmesan, the other stuff just doesn't taste the same anymore. It has kind of a nutty, intense, salty flavor. So I need about a half a cup of it ground, so I'm gonna kind of eyeball it and just slice off a little bit and throw it in the food processor. And it looks like our water is boiling now, so I'm going to have my mom open up the box of pasta, and you need about 8 ounces of pasta. This is a 12-ounce box, so we're going to put about 3/4 of the box in. So,
and this is whole wheat pasta.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So, and actually, you guys have that as a sample in front of you. And it's not just whole wheat; it's ancient grain pasta for you to sample. So, it has whole wheat, and then it also has, I think, like, I'll have Mom read the ingredient list, but I think it's like quinoa, millet, sorghum, a bunch of like different types of grains. Sure. Or we can actually just leave it off.
Okay.
Maybe. No.
So the ingredients are wheat, whole grain flour blend. It's got quinoa, amaranth, millet, sorghum, and teff? All
So
right.
those are all
Teff? What is teff?
It's a grain. Yeah, it's
Okay.
just a different type of whole grain. So,
All right, a new grain.
so it adds variety to your diet by incorporating something like this. But you don't have to. You could use just plain whole wheat pasta in here, or if you're, whoops, there we go. It's boiling now. So we could also use just plain white pasta if your family's not quite familiar with whole grain yet. I'm going to pour a little bit of maybe olive oil in there to keep it from boiling over. And so you could use white or do like a 50-50 of white and whole wheat just to kind of get your family on board to start with. So, okay, I'm going to make some noise here grinding the cheese. I found it, yes, at both local grocery stores, Walmart and Chief. You can just leave that off.
Isn't that keeping?
Okay, so our cheese is ground. I'll put some up on a spoon. So it's kind of chunky right now, if you can see it. So I have about a half a cup in there. And now I'm going to add the rest of the ingredients. I'm going to add our basil. So we need about 2 cups of fresh basil. It has to be fresh. Can't use, dried in this recipe or anything.
And that's a great way, if you
have
have
you help me pick
basil
some up.
or parsley, like by the midsummer, you have so much you don't know what to do with.
Exactly.
And so pesto is a great way to, you can freeze pesto after you have it made. I just put it in a freezer bag and pat it flat, label it, date it, and put it in my freezer. And then in the winter when there is no basil outside, you can make the same thing and feel like a little bit of summer.
Yep.
So
exactly,
it's
and
good.
that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to show you how to make this recipe. Again, you can do this with different types of herbs. It doesn't have to be just basil, and that's why you have recipe for oregano pesto, cilantro pesto, because sometimes you just have overwhelming amounts of herbs and you don't know what to do with them. So, it gives you a way to preserve them for winter. So Mom mentioned putting it in a bag. You can also put it in like an ice cube tray. I would recommend lining your ice cube tray with plastic wrap though, because it seems like the combination of the oil and the herbs, they will smell like that herb forever and always. So you may want to line it with some plastic wrap. So, and then of course you can transfer those cubes to a zip top bag so you can use the ice cube trays over and over again. Okay, so we have about 2 cups. I'm going to put a little bit more.
Yeah, use
This
it.
is kind of a recipe that you can do some eyeballing. So you have your base recipe there, but when I'm cooking in my kitchen, I mean for a pesto, I don't really use a recipe. I just kind of start adding things until it tastes right to me. So, but I know some people aren't to that level yet, and you can certainly use the recipe, but you can adjust it as well. So I have the basil. I'm going to put pine nuts in there. So pine nuts are actually they come from pine trees. I guess it's like the female pine needle, or pine cone. Pine cone, not needle. Pine cone produces these pine nuts. They have a real piney taste. This is 1/3 of a cup in here actually, so you need 1/3 of a cup of pine nuts in there. The good source of healthy fats, the monounsaturated fats. So healthy for you. They are expensive, but you can use walnuts in this as well, which is a little bit less expensive. So.
And I was telling her before, since they do have the oils in, if they sit on your shelf a long time, they will get rancid. So if you buy them, because they are so expensive, you don't want to waste them. I either freeze them or keep them refrigerated until I use them, because they will turn rancid like any nut. Well, the oils
Yeah, you can.
bitter.
Yeah, store any of your nuts in the freezer to preserve the shelf life. I guess I go through my walnuts and almonds fast enough that I don't need to, but if you don't use them that frequently, you can always store them in the freezer. How's our pasta doing?
It's doing well.
Is it? Do you want to take a pasta out and test it, or
it's not ready yet.
Not okay. Mom says it's not ready. Okay, so I'm just going to throw 3 garlic cloves in there.
Now, the first time I can tell you a little story, when I was younger and just started with my herbs, and I made a pasta. It was for Father's Day, and we had spare ribs on the grill, and I had this wonderful dinner, and I just, a little basil is good. A lot would be better. So instead of like a 1/4 cup, I probably put a 1/2 cup. And yeah, nobody really enjoyed my basil pesto because I made it too strong. And that's another thing I think you need to realize. Your pungent herbs are strong, and a lot of times you have to get used to the taste. If this is a little too strong for you that you made today, you can use less. You don't have to use the whole amount. And sometimes that's what turns people off of new things, is because rosemary is a pungent herb, your thyme is a pungent herb. You want to use little amounts at
Yeah,
first.
they're very, very strong. Okay, so I added a little bit of lemon juice in there while Mom was talking about herbs. Actually, I forgot my salt and pepper. I'm going to throw a little quarter. Do you have the measuring spoons down there? Mm-hmm. 1/4 teaspoon. Oops, there's 2 sets here.
Sorry.
1/4 teaspoon of salt. And I'm just going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper as well. And then I'm going to start blending this. Let me check my... Okay. A little loud. Okay, now some people like pesto a little chunky. I like mine chunky, I guess. Some people like it a little more smooth, so feel free to blend it as much as you like. So now that it's blending, I'm going to measure out a 1/2 cup of olive oil, and I'm going to add that. I'm actually going to scrape the sides down real quick. I'm going to add that to the food processor while it's running, and that just helps it all to stay blended together. Go. So there's a hole right at the top, so I'm just going to pour it in there while it's running. Okay, that looks perfect to me. How's our pasta? Still not done?
A little bit of time yet.
Okay, a little bit of time.
What's the difference between pouring the oil in while it's going versus not?
It would probably turn out either way, but I've heard that it helps with the emulsion, maybe?
Emulsion, yes.
Emulsion.
Just makes
keep it
light and fluffy, kind of, just because it beats that air into it.
I think it needs just a tiny bit longer, actually, now that I took the lid off. Okay, that should be good. Can you smell that in the room? That's, herbs and basil, they're so pungent. Their aroma and the garlic, it just fills the room. So, all right, so you guys all want to see this beautiful pesto. It's just the most bright green in color. It's just really pretty. Now this can turn a little bit brown when it's exposed to oxygen for a while, so if you cover it with plastic wrap and have the plastic wrap touching the pesto, that should help to keep it green. Also, freezing it will help to preserve the color a little bit. So
It does. It stays about that color, and it's so fun.
It tastes so good when you pull it out in the middle of winter after not having fresh stuff for a while. And my family loves pesto. My husband could eat pesto with a spoon. I don't usually let him, but
Okay, I think this is just about done.
Okay.
So you want me just to drain it then?
Yep. Well, actually, we're going to add our peas first.
Oh, that's right.
So here's our beautiful green pesto. And again, I like mine a little on the chunky side. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to, so our pasta is almost done. So for our pasta recipe, it has peas in it as well. So they're frozen peas, so I'm just going to add the cup of frozen peas right into the water. And they don't need to cook long at all. They don't really need to cook. So I'm going to have Mom grab the, and actually you can just hold it right up here.
I hold it up there? Okay.
And, how are these? Not bad. Should have turned the flame off first, huh? Am I
We're good.
good? Okay.
The ER is right around the corner, right?
That's right, the ER is right around the corner, and I'll take this out of your way if you just want to set that back over the pot,
Okay.
maybe to drain.
Ready?
Yep.
I'm going to turn this baby off.
Yep, we'll turn off our flame. Okay, and then I'll have you grab the big bowl. And we're gonna add some chicken for some protein, because I know how a lot of people in this room, you don't want side dishes, you want full meals that you can get on the table for your family. So we're gonna add some chicken, about a cup of chicken. We're gonna use the other half of this chicken for our pizza. So chicken for protein. And then our pasta and peas are gonna go right on top of the chicken to kind of warm it up. And I'll have Mom kind of stir it in. And now we're gonna take about a 1/4 cup of our pesto and just add it right into the pasta.
Not the whole bowl.
Not the whole bowl of pesto. So this is a calorie dense food, so you wanna kind of go sparingly on it. Because it is olive oil and nut and cheese based, so you don't need a lot of it. So that's close. And you can always, add more to taste. So I'm gonna start there and we'll stir it all together. Now I made this recipe up just, out of stuff I had in my kitchen. And my family loves it. My boys devour this. So, that's why I keep making it and thought that you should see it today, because it's so easy. If you have the pesto already made, either in the freezer or, maybe you made it earlier, you're looking for a way to use some pesto up or some herbs up, this meal can go together in just a couple minutes, as fast as you can cook the pasta. If you have leftover chicken and pesto already, it goes together really fast. How's that look? Is that enough pesto?
I think so.
All right. Why not a little bit more just for fun? Okay, so we're gonna come back to the pesto here in a second too. I'm gonna kind of clean up this area.
Smells really good.
It does smell really good. Okay.
Everybody see what that looks like?
Get all this stuff out of the way. Okay, so we've made our pesto, we've made our pasta, and now we're gonna move on to our pizza. So who here doesn't love pizza? So a couple benefits of this pizza. If you know me, you know that I'm gonna throw whole wheat into it. So we are gonna make a partial whole wheat crust. And also, it's a lot lower in salt than the traditional pizza. So, of course, I've altered the recipe to take out some of the sodium in it. And some of the toppings might be a little bit lower in salt too. So quite a bit lower in sodium than a traditional pizza that you would get, from a chain restaurant or the freezer. So to get started, we need the little bowl over there. And I am using, it's actually pizza crust yeast. So this is really fast and easy yeast. It requires no rise time. So you can literally make a whole pizza, start to finish, baking included, in 30 minutes. At least that's what they advertise on here. Of course, you know, at home I have little munchkins pulling on my legs, like pushing me away from my cooking. So, you know, it doesn't always take 30 minutes, but if you don't have any distractions, then often it will. So you just add that right into your bowl.
Andrea, where do you find that?
I find it usually, I guess I found it usually at Walmart in the baking aisle with all the other yeasts. It comes in like a package of 3, like it looks like a strip of 3 that are all connected together. If you can't find it, Mom, will you grab the other yeast down there? This is a rapid rise yeast. You could also use something like this, but it would require a 30-minute rise after the dough is made. So, but you could also use this if you can't find the this color, this yeast, the green package. So, and it has recipe for pretty much the same dough on the back of it. So, okay, so we're gonna mix all of the dry ingredients together. So we need a cup of, whole wheat. I'm actually gonna steal this and a cup of whole wheat flour. Into the bowl. And then some sugar. So if you want to grab the sugar, we need, I'll let you do something. We need 1.5 teaspoons of sugar.
And I just want to make a statement real quick about this rapid rise yeast. A lot of times people want to proof their yeast. You don't need to do that with this because it needs to rise right. That's part of the secret.
Right.
So.
Yep, so literally, yeah, and some yeasts you don't, yeah. I guess with this.
With this, you may want to proof it.
So dissolve it in water first,
warm water
and make
first,
sure it's bubbling. So, okay, and then I need a fork. So I have the salt, sugar, whole wheat flour, and yeast in here, and not quite yet. Okay. So that we'll add next. But the, we will need the water, the carafe of water. Okay. We're gonna add 2/3 of a cup of water, and there's actually a 1/3 cup measuring cup right there. So you need like almost hot water for this, 120 to 130 degrees. So at home, if you have like a thermometer and you wanna actually measure the temperature of the water, that might not be a bad idea. Okay, and then stir it together for about a minute until all the ingredients are moistened, and it'll be pretty sticky.
Is that about what your hottest out of the faucet? Or?
It's about, yeah, pretty hot out of the faucet. So yeah, if you use like hot tap water, that would be about right. It's pretty warm. Okay.
Can it be too hot?
It can be, yeah. If it's too hot, it can kill the yeast. So you don't want like boiling water. Okay. So it's really, really sticky here. So now is when we're going to add some white flour in. And this, I think on the recipe, how much flour? A cup to a cup and a, what does it say for white? A cup and a half. So you're actually just going to start with just a very small amount. And I'll let you stir it if you want. Okay. So let's start with, I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit in there and let you stir.
Okay.
So you want to add enough flour so that it forms into a ball. And then I'm going to start to knead it on my sheet and add the rest of the flour that way. So it's just naturally going to take in as much flour as it needs. No pun intended.
I think that looks good.
Yeah, so that looks good. So now I'm going to flour my surface here.
You got some.
Yep. I'm just gonna put a ton of flour on my surface, and I'm gonna start kneading it. And while I'm doing that, my mom brought a visual aid, actually, and I'm gonna have her talk about it a little bit. So I mentioned my mom is an avid gardener. So she started an herb garden actually when probably my siblings were infants, which I'm the baby of the family. I have 3 older siblings. My next oldest is 7 years older than me, so whoops.
You made me blunder.
So my oldest sibling, you probably started it when Chris and Tom were little.
Probably, yeah.
You started your herb garden because she needed something that stayed done, which I totally understand now, because like you clean something with little kids and like 10 seconds later it's a mess again. I wash my floor and then my child throws food all over it. So these are all from her garden. So she's been gardening for a long time, so she has a collection, and there's like a story behind every single plant in her garden. So I'm gonna let her talk about her beautiful plants while I'm starting to knead my dough.
Okay, and like I said, I bring a visual because I think it's fun for people to see things, but also after this, you're welcome to come up and touch and feel and smell, because most of these things in here are, like Andrea said, edible. We start out with the roses. Like she said, we make wine. We make rose petal wine. You can also eat rose petals as long as you don't use pesticides on them in jellies, or you can sprinkle them on salads. You don't want a little bit, but there's some edible flowers out there that are fun. Your wild violets, your nasturtium. I have a nasturtium leaf in here someplace. I also have lemon balm, which smells lemony, and it's so fun to bake with. I put it in muffins. I put lemon thyme, which is here as well. The lemon balm has European roots. My ancestors came from Europe. We've been cooking and gardening and farming. This isn't new, and I'm not an expert. It's just in my blood. I can't not do it. But my Aunt Frances gave me this, and it is the seeds from Europe. Valerian, which is a tea they used to drink it to help them sleep and calm down. I have oregano, wonderful for pizzas. I may add a little to this if I was home doing this. I have the garlic chives. They're related to the onion chives. You can also eat chive blossoms. You use the chive leaves. They don't dry well, but most of these I will either dry in a dehydrator or, like I said, I freeze a lot of them because I like the fresh green. After you dehydrate stuff, they're just not quite so pretty. You guys have any questions about things? Most of these are perennials. They'll grow again. That's why I have them already.
What types of things would you recommend for somebody that's a beginner gardener? What herbs should they start with?
You know, there's a song, rosemary, sage, and thyme. You know, really.
There is a song? Can you sing it for us?
No, I can't sing. But there is a song that talks about those 3. Come on, some of you guys, help me out here. But those are easy. You want to do things that you know your family's going to like. If you like dill pickles or dill and potato salad, dill is very easy. Once you sow dill, it will be your friend forever. It
You'll
comes
never
up
get rid
and
of it.
self-seeds. However, that's a companion plant, and I do a lot of that as well. If you plant that with your broccoli, your Brussels sprouts, it'll keep away the cabbage worms that you so often get in it. So it's a good thing. I have it coming up all over. Gabe pulls out a lot of it. My husband is my right-hand man. We work together. That's another fun thing with this. I call it date night. We'll mess in the kitchen together. We mess in the garden together. He does compost for me. It's just not me, and I don't like to say I'm an expert because there's always so much to learn. I am a common gardener that is learning all the time.
She's an expert. We plant things at the same time, and I go over to her house, and hers is 4 times bigger than mine is.
But I tell her that's because I'm older, and we've been composting this dirt for 40 years, where she's just starting. So give her time. Yeah. This is a dill weed that starts coming up now, and this is actually, I like this better than the seed. You can take this little guy, just take my scissors out in the garden. You want it on a day like this, after the dew is dry. You go out and you snip your herbs you want to dry. I just get the little skinny white paper plates, go out with my scissors, fill each paper plate with an individual herb. You can either stick them in your oven with just the oven light on, or I do have a dehydrator. You can just put them in your dehydrator, and they don't take long to dry. Usually 12 hours, you got your dried herbs ready to go. And I put them in either Ziploc bags, or I like glass to preserve them in better than bags. So, go ahead.
So I kneaded the dough. You need to knead it for about 4 minutes, and it's just, you saw me kind of pressing it down and rolling it over and pressing it down and rolling it over till it's nice and elastic. And then I took a rolling pin and rolled the dough out to your desired size. If you like a thicker crust, you know it's going to be smaller. If you like a thinner crust, make it as big as you want. So a lot of options there. So then my little trick for getting my dough on my pan, actually first, before I do that, I'm going to pour some olive oil. We forgot olive oil in our dough, didn't we?
We did, but you put a little extra there, it'll get in.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
Dry.
that's, cooking for a family, sometimes it's not always perfect. But the main thing to think about is that it's nutrition. You are nourishing their bodies. That's your job, I think, as a mom, to give them good foods to eat, to nourish their bodies well. And if it's not perfect, my husband is the gourmet cooker. He will chop things perfect. I'm a hunk cooker. I mean, get it chopped, get it clean, get it in the crock pot.
I'm actually going to ask you to slice some tomatoes for me.
I'll show you how I hunk.
So this pizza, we're just adding some simple ingredients. We're going to add our pesto, obviously, and then the tomatoes and chicken and mozzarella cheese. So I have my dough on here, and I'm going to give my pesto a little stir because it looks like the oil is separating out a little bit. And then you need about 1/3 cup of pesto on the pizza. Now, there's nothing wrong with traditional tomato sauce, but again, I'm just showing you different ways how to use your pesto here. And it just adds a really yummy twist on the pizza. Plus, you have the tomatoes that you're putting on fresh, so you're still getting that tomato flavor on here, but you're just also getting some intense basil and garlic flavor from the pesto as well. So look how beautiful, bright green that is.
On the tomatoes.
Sure.
So for those of us who don't have gardens,
Yep.
when we're selecting a tomato,
Mm-hmm.
what do you look for?
Well,
select a good one
you
for
want it
something.
to look for something that's really red. So if there's a lot of green on it, that means it was probably picked when it wasn't ripe. So that it might not have a lot of flavor. You want it to be kind of firm. You don't want it to be like mushy when you're when you're picking it up. But so I guess firm and bright red. See how bright red this is? Okay, so I'm throwing my sliced tomatoes on here.
I think too, if it depends on Roma tomatoes or a firmer tomato, that you would use more for a sauce. But for something like this, any type of tomato is good.
Mom chunks. That's okay. Okay, then we're just going to throw some pre-cooked chicken on here as well. And these are just suggestions for toppings. You can, put as many toppings as, or different toppings, whatever your family likes on this pizza. And then our cheese. I have about 1.5 cups. I don't think I'm going to use it all though, because that looks like enough. So then this goes in, I believe it's a 400-degree oven. Is that what it says on here? 400-degree oven. It takes about 12 to 15 minutes to cook until the crust starts to brown, and the cheese is melted, obviously. So really simple, easy pizza. A couple ways to use pesto. Simple pasta, since we don't have an oven. This is what it's going to look like when it's all done. So does anybody have any questions now that we've made our 3 recipes?
I have an herb question.
Yeah, I'll let Mom answer.
When they flower, is it that, do you want to harvest them before they flower?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Can you
That-
use them after they flower, or?
You can, but a lot of the energy of the essential oils go into developing that flower in the seed. So if you see your basil starting to flower, cut that off before it flowers. Just go ahead and deflower them. It hurts your heart to do that because you feel like you're hurting those herbs, but it's okay if you want to use them to eat. If you, like my sage is already going to flower, which I couldn't believe, but it is. And so I will go out and deflower that, and then oregano too. Any of your herbs you want to pick before they flower. Right now, when they're just tender and coming up, that's when you want to pick them and harvest them for your eating. Then if they do flower, if you're too busy and they flower, go out and deflower them. The neat thing about herbs, you can abuse them. They'll come back and they'll start growing again, and you can harvest them when you have time. So they're pretty forgiving. They're great to grow. That's, like she said, I started when my kids were little. Sometimes I didn't get them watered, sometimes I didn't get it weeded, but here it is 40 years later, and I still have. My sage is one of the first ones that I started with, and they still come back. They forgive you. So they're a fun plant to grow.
Well, thank you, Mom, for joining me today and sharing your passion for herbs. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you. I feel like